One of the things that's most difficult to get through your mind when you're an instructional designer and when you're first starting out is writing behavioral objectives and how to make them actually objectives and not something else. And I see every student struggle with this. So, Denise, we're going to kick this around for a couple of minutes because I think there's some points that'll help people as they're thinking about this. So, first thing you want to think about when writing objectives is, can you actually evaluate what you want someone to be able to do? And this is really key to it. And it gets into performance agreement, which performance agreement is the fact that your objective and your evaluation task actually match. And I'll show you some examples of that in a second. But as a designer, you want to know that you're actually going to be able to evaluate. So the things that pop out to a seasoned instructional designer when they look at objectives, if anybody uses the word understand or learn or participate or any of these other things, these are not real objectives. They might be goals, which are fine. Put them in your design plan, your rationale, but they're not objectives. I would challenge you to evaluate understanding.
Right. Understand how to read a book. How do you evaluate somebody?
Yeah. Understand how to write an objective, right? So what we fall back on when we're first starting this is, okay, well, we want everybody to understand. Well, I agree with you, but that's not instructional design. That's not professional instructional design. So as you're writing objectives, make sure that everything that you write in your behaviors is observable and measurable. You have to be able to see it. You have to be able to measure it. Otherwise, people are just participating. This is not a legitimate course. This is not something that you're going to be able to get certification for, or any of the other things that you might be concerned about. So the first trigger is make sure you don't use understand, learn, anything that can't be evaluated. And the second thing you want to think about is, what is the relationship between your objectives and mastery? So you want each objective to be 1 point of mastery. You can't combine lots of behaviors in one objective, because how are you going to evaluate it? You're not going to be able to do that. And the more you separate these out, the more likely you are to have a much better design and something that's going to work really well in implementation. So I know you've gone through this, Denise, when you're teaching instructional design. Students really push back on this. It's difficult for them.
The words learn and understand, and I was even the same way, Chuck, when I took your first course in my master's program, that learn and understand, that was really hard at first to get that into my brain. But then, you said the key words. Can you measure or observe it? And there's no planet in this solar system, this universe, where I can measure or observe whether somebody has learned something or can understand something. So what helps me is something you taught me, is use an action verb. An action verb is measurable and observable. So perfect example, if you're struggling to figure out what action verbs would be appropriate for your learning objective, fall on Bloom's taxonomy. Just Google it. We'll put a link. Yeah, we'll put a link in the description, but Bloom's taxonomy will help you to see which verbs really resonate with a particular goal that you have in mind for your outcomes.
And you can take it one level higher too, is in my books, and we've talked about this in different videos we've done. I'll just mention it briefly, but content mastery continuum. Okay, where are students on this continuum from novice to expert? That will help you determine which verbs you use too. There's times when you just want people to participate and they can just, okay, I can answer that question, I can offer an opinion, I can do whatever. There are times when you really need them to be able to complete something. They have to be able to produce a product or show that they are competent in something. So Bloom's is a great tool, but you need to know where you are on Bloom.
The perfect example would be a surgeon. So, if you're an objective for a surgeon wouldn't be to list the steps of opening up someone's brain and operating on it, right? No, that would be...
Well, at least not yours, maybe mine. It'd be much simpler. They just, go in there, look around, and close it back up. But I mean, it is where you are on this continuum. So if you're a novice, your expectations as a designer and its learning population are much less. If you're going out the high end as an expert and you're looking at certification or something else, you got to be right at the top. They need to demonstrate. They need to be able to do things tangibly that you can measure and observe. Otherwise, what do you really got?
One other thing that comes to mind with these learning objectives that my students struggle with are the LY verbs. So to what extent, right? Effectively, properly, successfully.
Yeah, all these degree statements that you can't measure.
Right. You can't measure those. Those are subjective. What you think is successful is not maybe something I think is successful. So I always tell people, get rid of those if possible, or make sure that you do detail out what that actually means. What does successfully mean? Maybe it's successfully by manufacturer's suggestion, or something if they have to refer to a manual or a manufacturer, their detail, what makes it effective.
The one question I always ask is, do you need that word?
Most times you don't.
If you can take that LY word out and just, there's your degree statement. This is what you need to be able to do at this level of proficiency. Basic ABCD objectives.
Yeah. ABCD, if you don't know, audience, behavior, condition, degree.
Degree.
Stay tuned for a new video on that. But yeah, I think that this has been really helpful. I think this should be something this will be something that I will refer my students to this video just as a refresher, because, if this isn't something you're doing all the time, writing learning objectives, you might have to come back to a video like this, relearn it, re-listen, and be able to then apply what you've learned from it.
And the one parting thought, objectives are never second nature to a designer. We always struggle writing objectives. The difference is we know what the pitfalls are and we're aware of them and we look for them. It doesn't mean we don't struggle writing objectives. That's what professional designers do. And it's always a work in progress.
Indeed. Whenever I hear the word learn or understand, I hear this big, your voice. I hear you, Chuck.
Sorry. Sorry.
It's all good. I love it. But yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I hope this little session was of value to you.
Thanks so much, everyone.